Chapter 30. The next morning I was sitting in Miss Love's kitchen eating hot apple pie and cheese and hoping she wouldn't pick a fuss with me like she had with everybody else. If she did, or if she got to raving on about cold Sassy treating her bad, I was going to say, "Ma'am, I just remembered Papa told me to paint the iron fence today. I better get on home." If she brought up that mess about keeping her maiden name, I'd say, "I reckon you got a right to, Miss Love, but it's foolish if you care a hoot about cold Sassy accepting you as Grandpa's wife, or his housekeeper, either one." I didn't get a chance to see if my nerve would hold up to my indignation, because she was just as nice as you please. Besides that big piece of pie, she fixed me a glass of lemonade and some for herself, and sat down to talk. She asked right off how was the camping trip, which made me uneasy, I tell you. "We had a swell time," I said. Taking a big slurp of lemonade, I changed the subject. "You sure make good lemonade, Miss Love." "Well, I've got plenty. Help yourself." One time I asked Queenie why she drinks tea out of a quart mason jar instead of a glass, and you know what she said? Said, "Mr. Will, that first glass will always be's the bestest, so I makes it just as big as I can." I laughed the way white folks always do when they tell something funny a colored person said. Miss Love laughed too. Then she said, "But of course you know the real truth about that, Will." "What do you mean?" My pie fork paused in midair on its way to my mouth. "I mean, colored cooks know white people don't want them using their dishes and things. That's why they all drink out of jars and eat out of old plates or pie pans." "Ma'am? Well, does Queenie use the same plates as the family?" "Of course not, Miss Love. It ain't the custom." "And what's Queenie's joke about that?" The color rose to my face. Clearly, Miss Love didn't understand. Despite she wasn't exactly a Yankee, she was from way north of cold Sassy. Before I could change the subject, she said, "Queenie uses an old knife and fork at your house too, doesn't she, Will? And always washes them in her pan and her jar last, just before the dog and cat dishes? That's the custom, isn't it?" "Queenie doesn't care what she eats out of, Miss Love. No more than she cares if pot liquor runs off with a turnip salad and soaks her biscuits, or if the cream gravy gets all over her mashed sweet potatoes. She likes using a pan. It holds more than a plate." Being an outsider, Miss Love couldn't understand that Queenie really just didn't care. Yankee, I thought, burning. Yankee, Yankee. It was a hot day, but there came a chill in the air as I finished my pie. Miss Love chopped up 2 big carrots and put them in her apron pocket, along with some shriveled blue yellow apples out of Granny's bowl on the work table. Then she reached into Granny's old brown crock for some sugar lumps. She tossed me one. I wasn't a child. She couldn't make up to me with a darn sugar lump. "I'll save it for the horse," I mumbled, dropping it in the pocket of my overalls. Miss Love took a green print sunbonnet of Granny's from a nail in the kitchen, and we headed for the barn. Old T.R. sprang up from under Granny's boxwood where he'd been cooling off and ran ahead of us to chase Granny's Dominican hens out of the path. I didn't say a word all the way to the barn. "Look, there he is," Miss Love pointed to the gelding. He was cropping grass in the back pasture not far from Grandpa's mule. Mr. Beautiful raised his head and stared at us, and Miss Love squeezed my arm. "He's just so handsome, Will. That shiny black coat and the white blaze on his forehead. And look how he holds his head." I don't think she even noticed she had touched me, but the pit of my stomach might near flipped over. Looking towards us, the horse sniffed the wind, started walking, then quickly picked up his gait to a fast trot. As he got near the barn, he shied at a rock in the grass, stumbled, reared up, and raced away, tail arched high. But he was soon back, nickering and snorting as he pranced sideways towards the pasture gate we were leaning on. Then he shot off again like an arrow. Miss Love put her hands to her mouth, as if she couldn't believe him. She said softly, "That's got to be the fastest horse in cold Sassy, maybe the fastest in Georgia." "Yes'm." Pride rose up in me for being the one that had brought him to her. Every time the gelding came near, Miss Love held out a piece of carrot. Finally, he stopped, walked slowly toward her, stopped again, came closer, and glistening with sweat, stretched his neck to get the carrot. His breathing was hard. "Come here, Mr. Beautiful, I won't hurt you." "Here, baby," she murmured, holding out an apple. "Boy, howdy, I can't hardly wait to see that fancy Texas saddle on him," I said. She blushed as if she thought the saddle might remind me how she'd kissed Clayton McAllister. I blushed too, because it did remind me of that. I said quickly, "Ma'am, I hope you ain't forgot. That horse ain't broke to anything but a halter. You won't try to ride him anytime soon, will you? I wish I dared, but no, I'm still just making friends. Here, boy, she called, walking along the fence. A big horse like him, he could kill you. She met my eyes with her gray-blue ones, and the long dark lashes didn't even flutter. She said, Mr. McAllister taught me all about training horses, Will. It's done in definite stages. I helped him train the mare that was... She hesitated. The mare that was to be mine after we married. The one the saddle was made for. Yeah, I thought. And I bet you kissed Mr. McAllister between every sugar lump and apple and hugged him every time the mare did what you wanted her to. I hated Mr. McAllister. I wished Miss Love would touch me again. She didn't. It was the horse she kept touching. She rubbed his ears and his neck, talking soft and holding tight to the halter. Soon as she let him go, he was off again across the pasture. We watched him a few minutes, then walked back towards the house. We were about even with Granny's flower pit when I stopped and asked the question that had been on my mind ever since I got there. Does Grandpa know, did anybody tell him about the way Mr. McAllister, There was an empty minute before she came right out with it. Kissed me? Her face was hidden under the bonnet, so I don't know if she blushed, but I did. As a matter of fact, Will, somebody did tell Mr. Blakesley. It wasn't me, Miss Love, I swear. Must have been Miss Effie Bell. Maybe she did, I don't know. But I told him first. You? I couldn't believe any lady was that dumb. I said I bet he'd already heard. She waved a honeybee away from her face. No, this was on Saturday night after Mr. McAllister was here. And if he had heard, he'd have said so as soon as he got home. Your grandfather is a very direct man, Will. Yes, and he is. Still, I kept thinking, what if he does know? I got nervous as a witch wondering. But all he talked about at supper was the horse. Which stall it could have, which day you might get back with it, things like that. And he asked, what did I know about breaking a horse? I could see he didn't know one thing about it himself. When did you tell him, Miss Love? About, At 1 o'clock Sunday morning. We both went to bed early, but I just tossed and turned. I was so nervous I thought I'd scream. Finally, I decided my only hope was to be honest and tell him myself before before Miss Effie Bell did or somebody else. You called him out of bed? He don't like... I just went to his door. It was open, for the breeze, I stood there holding my lamp and called, Mr. Blakesley. He said, what do you want? What's wrong? So I told him how Mr. McAllister had barged in and was kissing me before I knew what was happening, and that Miss Effie Bell probably saw it. I said I'd pack up and leave as soon as it got light. I kicked my bare foot at a bunch of tall grass. I had a glimmer of something I didn't like. Sounding bolder than I felt, I said, why'd you offer to leave, Miss Love? I thought you were hoping if you were honest about it, he'd let you stay. Well, yes, Will. A wry little smile lit her face. But I guess I thought I should at least offer to leave. Did you cry, ma'am? I think she sensed what I was driving at. Hesitating, she admitted she cried a little. What did Grandpa say? Nothing for a minute. Then he told me to go to bed. Mr. McAllister's on the train to Texas, Miss Love, so that's the end of it. Effie Bell or no Effie Bell. Then he raised up on his elbow and said, now, if you want to see me mad, Miss Love, just let me get up for breakfast and you ain't made me no yeast bread like I asked you to. We both laughed, ambling on towards the house. She said, tell the truth, I'd forgotten all about making that bread. Well, it had been an awful day, as you know, Will, and I was worn out. But I went to the kitchen and got at it. In the middle of the night? Yes, the oven was still warm from supper, so I mixed the dough and set it in there to rise. About 3 o'clock, I got up to knead it, and at 5, I fired up the stove. I had the bread baked and toast ready when Mr. Blakesley came in to breakfast. I had to admire any lady that anxious to please.